if anybody's watching us, we're trying to figure this out. It showed me real quick kind of numbers, but now it went away. Let's see. Well, if anyone's there listening, yeah, I'm not seeing numbers at the moment. Wonder why that went away. If anybody is, you can put something there in the chat. And I'm going to pink around on numbers. Oh, there it is. Oh, there are. I have to click a link. Well, hello, whoever's watching us right now. This is the first time we have done this together. I did this on here once before, but I don't remember how it all works. So it looks like there's about 10 folks, and the number keeps rolling on. So, but I have to click that to see how many there are. So if you're watching on YouTube, you should be able to go down and find comments somewhere. I don't know what you're listening on, if you're on a laptop or a phone or whatever, but a comment. And oh, there's Mary Grace. Okay, that works. Thank you. Let me enlarge the chat, and there we go. Hey, Mary, are you guys seeing that, Jake and Anna?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Beautiful.
It doesn't show me how many people are on unless I click some other button. So it says 12 people. So, oh, there we go. Okay.
Right.
Beautiful. Thank you guys. Thanks for being here. All right. Well,
Hello, Kevin.
hey.
Hi, Kevin.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Jake and Hannah. All right. Well, those of you who are listening and coming on, that's the option right there. So we're literally live. I'm in Colorado. Jake and Hannah are in Hawaii, and here you are watching us, listening to us live. We are recording this. It'll go up on a podcast on my podcast, Kevin Miller Podcast. We'll call it S.A.G.E sessions or series, or you called it something else in something you sent out, Jake.
I don't remember. We talked about the S.A.G.E series,
Yeah.
S.A.G.E conversations. Yeah.
So we'll post it. I'll do my normal intro, and it'll come in and be like a normal podcast that I do, but on this S.A.G.E series, if that's what we call it. So we're going to talk about a topic of S.A.G.E today, the three of us, Jake and Hannah and I, and but we'll be watching the chat. And so if you have a question or a comment, we'll be paying attention to that best we can and engage with you.
And we will be doing things in the future that allow for more interaction. Right now, what we're trying to do is get the blueprint out in the world, share it with as many people as we can, answer questions, and then we'll be doing additional things in the coming weeks and months.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, yeah. So feel free with questions or comments anytime we're talking. We'll pay attention to it as we're discussing. So I see 15 people here with us. That's a nice sized crowd to engage with. And Jake and Hannah, if you guys are ready, I'll kind of just give us a start.
Great.
Let me give a timestamp here. So we are talking about reality today, or the lack thereof. And if I can, Jake and Hannah, share real quick, that I think is the first thing that really I resonated with, that drew me to you guys of, wait, something's different to me. It was, I shared last time we talked about connecting dots. Here I am talking with psychiatrists and professors and the researchers and everybody in human potential, and these disconnections, and you guys talking about reality and interpretations hit me in a way that none of the other concepts of, hey, write a better story, you're the author of your narrative, all those things that never felt, what's the opposite of disingenuous? Genuous? That doesn't work, I don't think. But it never resonated with me. And I felt like it wasn't getting traction with people. And when I helped myself with your guidance, with your content, to realize that when I'm sensing anything with my waking mind, in essence, maybe non-waking as well, but anything I'm sensing, it is totally unique to me. I am not, and there's our quote that's in the blueprint, I am not experiencing reality. I'm experiencing my individual interpretation, and so are you. And I think it was just the for me, realizing that, wait, I've always thought that there is this correct reality, and we're all trying to figure it out and then say we've gotten there, we've transcended, or we're enlightened now, and we're the ones that understand reality. And through this work with you guys, I just really, I blew my mind with, wait a minute, it is a unique, everything I am seeing, I am having an experience. It is a story from the ages, and and it's just mine. And the guy next to me, I don't care. The kid next to me is having a totally different experience.
Right.
That was, I feel like that was really the start of where we came together on S.A.G.E, was me just kind of having I keep wanting to speak unsagely. My world rocked. At the time I did, because I didn't get it. So you guys rocked my world until I realized it was me doing it.
You were doing the rocking. Yeah. And we rocked ourselves because I think you came to this with beginner's mind. And we've been doing this for 25 years. We learned it from John and Joyce Weir. We largely use the language and the orientation unconsciously at this point. And when we watched you open yourself up and aha yourself with some of these concepts, I think we rekindled our enthusiasm, and we saw this through a fresh lens. I think the fact that you had interviewed so many thoughtful, many brilliant, experienced people in the human potential movement, and the fact that this stood out to you as unique, was something about you being able to, as you say, connect the dots. And that's what's led to basically the creation of the S.A.G.E blueprint. This is a reconceptualization of work that started over 40 years ago with the Weirs. Hannah and I've been doing it for 25 years. Kevin got involved, and we realized for the first time, this is bigger than what we thought it was, based on observing and interacting with you, Kevin.
Oh, I'm sitting here typing notes, and yeah, I'd had so many people literally on the show with books, and the topic was story. It was narrative. It was perspective. So it was very, that concept wasn't revelatory, but the way that I understood it through you guys, and maybe through the language, when all of a sudden I have to say I'm doing it to myself, to realize, wait, I am, see, that is not a beautiful scene. It's just a scene. It's just scenery that's beautiful to me. Why? And it did. I wrote a minute ago, kind of broke the dam, but that's not, it's better that it connected the dots. My first thought was, oh, all these puzzle pieces that had not fit now fit. But I think later on, I came to it was just connecting dots to things that were disconnected. I was hearing these messages, but I wasn't quite connecting with them. And I really felt that my audience was not as well. And I felt like testimony from the culture is, we're not getting it. We're not getting it. We all are fighting for this reality. And I even felt like that from the spiritual side, that it was this quest to find and then live in reality. And again, it was an illusion. And
Exactly.
I think that's what, yeah, through you guys, I realized, oh my gosh, it is an illusion. And to some degree, I feel like you helped me see that it's always going to be an illusion that I create, and I'm making up meaning. When you said that, I'm making up meaning. At first, it was, I mean, depending on what you were talking about, I go, screw you. That's offensive. But then it's great. And I feel like that today. It's either the most liberating thing or the most offensive thing ever, that I'm making up the meaning, but I don't know how to refute it. I just don't.
Yeah, and the idea that it's offensive, one of the words we've used with you, it's disorienting, that I disorient myself when I stop thinking that the way I see the world is the way everybody sees the world, or the way I see the world is the right way to see the world.
Right.
And then when somebody sees the world or a dynamic in a different way, all of a sudden we have conflict or tension. And unfortunately, we generally have an unhealthy response to that. Instead of opening up and becoming curious, we have a tendency to lock down and insist that the way that I make meaning is the right way to make meaning, that what I'm seeing is really what you should be seeing.
I think our culture has become more deeply steeped in this divisiveness as well.
Well, agreed, Hannah. And I also want to go back to the beginning with you guys because I think I know in my interpretation of myself, I feel like I don't think a lot of people would think I was a jerk or that I was um, being harmful necessarily, but I did think that my perspective was good. And I felt like I was aware and conscious and choosing the best ways. And I spent a lot of time trying to sell people on those ways, whether it was, my audience or my kids. And there was a lot of conflict. And I see, man, I'll tell you what, I see today a lot more engagement and attraction to my perspective now that I'm not trying to convince anybody and I'm just owning it for myself.
Yeah.
But I look back and I've talked about this with the kids and I go, yeah, I was that guy. I was the religious, black, white, right, wrong, no questions asked. And I really believed it. I didn't know anything different. I grew up with it. And and then what I learned for you is that's how I was gaining my security. And when you guys helped guided me to seeing this, it was a pretty radical realization of how insecure I had been. Confident, but so insecure. And it took me causing damage to realize that. And I met you guys right around that time.
Yeah, and this is where you put a tremendous focus on the idea of identity.
Right.
And that became your mantra for several months when we were communicating with you, recognizing the ways in which you were trying to protect your identity, your sense of who you thought you were. And that's been another significant shift in the work, how we've actually built that in as one of the 3 agreements. I don't know how much detail we'll go into about that today, but that was a big shift.
Well, I do want to hit just interpretation. I mean, that's the word. I don't know. I mean, you could, when we first talked, you can use perspective, narrative, stories, but interpretation is what resonated with us, I guess, and it does now with me. I do, by the way, appreciate that we have about 20 people that are here with us live. So if you guys have any comments, you can welcome to throw them in there. And for those listening to the podcast later, we're doing this on a YouTube live link. But interpretation, that is there an objective reality? I struggled with that for a long time. And in talking with you guys, is there an objective reality? Sure, I can look outside and say it is raining. There's literal water coming down. And I qualify that by, is there anybody that would really disagree or interpret it wrong? Not really. I mean, we could get into quantum physics, I guess, but for the most part, we're all going to agree culturally that is rain. It is rain. The minute that I say anything descriptive, I just left objective reality. And I'm going to say, from a S.A.G.E standpoint, I cannot say it is. That would be false according to S.A.G.E. And now in my spirit, it's false. And so I look out and go, gosh, I might just say to the kids, hey, it's raining. Okay. But it's, oh my gosh, it is, raining cats and dogs. It is a terrible rain. It's a beautiful rain. According to me, I may look out at it and go, it's kind of a depressing rain. I struggle with that as a pro cyclist. I had to go out and train in that stuff. So kind of got this bad feeling about rain. Whereas my kids, it doesn't rain much here and they love it. And to realize that we have completely different interpretations, feelings, and emotions. And that if I own that and they own that, maybe you can say it better. I still don't fully comprehend or know how to say why that increases the connection so much. I understand why it doesn't cause dissension, but I feel like even saying it just causes an energy of connection.
Well, one of the things that happens when we give people space to say how they see the world, how they experience things, how they experience us, is that we are present and we're witnessing them. we're creating this space that doesn't exist when people insist on their view being right. And that sets up this dichotomy that immediately creates unconscious tension. Sometimes conscious, but it's always unconscious when we're with people who insist that the way they're seeing things is the way it is. It's right. Because if my view is different, then all of a sudden I make myself anxious.
Curiosity is the word that just came up to me there. Because I have, of course, with my, in whatever level of being sage that I am at any given moment, but in my consciousness of sage, I watch people and listen to them a lot. I'll be in social groups, could be with kids and friends and family, or at a social event, and watch the fairly benign statements of what is. Oh, that movie, it is great. It is whatever, that song, that person, that political part, whatever it is. And I'll watch somebody say something which you would think is benign. That movie, oh, it's a great movie. And I'll see somebody kind of give that little grimace. They probably thought maybe the movie was offensive to them for some reason, or bothered them, or it was immoral, or who knows what it was. And just to see that happen in little seemingly benign ways, those disconnects when we say what is, as opposed to, oh, that movie, man, I really inspired myself with that movie. To me, begs the question, especially if I don't agree, of going, really, why? There we've got connection, as opposed to, and I keep watching the disconnects happen. And it's fun, as you guys know, in my family, to watch. It still comes out a lot where kid will say, oh, that is the best song ever to me. And everybody smile. Yeah. Yeah. It feels like the reprogramming continues to amaze me. I amaze myself with it.
Myself.
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
And for those people who are watching, you'll see that we're still correcting ourselves. We are so deeply ingrained in speaking pretty much unconsciously, and most speech patterns are very habituated. And so we still find ourselves catching ourselves and changing our language as we're talking, which is a sign of how we keep ourselves. Kevin's used the word force, which I actually originally objected to, but I think it's pretty accurate for me that I force myself to see how I'm constructing meaning in the moment when I use sage language. I force myself to reveal my own beliefs when I use this language. It's as if I cannot hide from myself.
I also take myself off autopilot.
Yeah.
Because I'm slowing down and thinking through my words.
Which you guys have seen me, I even here, when I impassion myself with a topic like this, I have naturally, I still do sometimes, I speed up. I'm inspired. I'm digging it, and I speed up, and I fall out of the language. And so, yeah, using it that's where I use that word force, forces me. I guess you could say requires, but I feel that I'm forcing myself with it. Yeah. Forcing myself to slow down, be conscious. But the deeper thing is when I don't just quip off that, it was a great movie, that I say it's a great movie to me. I generally now am trying to find the emotion too, and say I inspired myself with it. But to do that, I have to think about why. Why did I like that movie or not? And be more
Curious.
Authentic. What?
Curious.
More curious. Yeah. That's where I feel like, back to the identity part, the word we've used so much is reveals. I reveal myself, speaking sagely and owning everything, personal agency with my entire experience. I reveal myself for better. Well, I was going to say for better and worse. I'd say to reveal myself should always be better. I'm not always pleased with what I reveal, but then I have the opportunity to correct it. And in the past, I was just unconscious. I still astound myself with that. Yeah. Here's the being conscious. Talk about the interpretation. So as I'm going along with my senses, experiencing things, owning the interpretation, there is, in talking about this, I've felt pushback from some people or just grappling with it when it is that emotion that they don't feel like they chose. Something happened and it's just that right there. And you helped me understand that, okay, right there in the moment, I didn't choose that interpretation, but you finished that out.
Yeah, so we kind of talk about two different sources of emotions, all of which come from within each of us. So all of my emotions, I am the source of them. Some of them are what's considered top down in terms of the way brain physiology works. And I actually am creating, generating my own emotions based on an event and how I interpret it. So Hannah tells me that she's unhappy with the way that I have not been helping around the house lately. And then I interpret that. For one, I may not agree with her, uh, but because we're in the SAGE orientation, it's much easier for me to hear that she's telling me about herself. She's not telling me about me. She's saying, this is my experience, is that you're not helping as much as I'd like you to. Okay, that's interesting because it's not my experience, but I really care about what her experience is. So I then will interpret that and I will either frustrate myself, disappoint myself, or maybe curious myself, or maybe I will um, reevaluate what's been going on in our lives. So all of that's a fairly constructive process, and it's easy for me to see how I'm doing this. Other times, an emotion arises that's called bottom up, which means that it's coming from within my body. A typical example is a startle response. If a loud car backfires or if somebody shoots a gun off, we may have a startle response, and maybe we feel scared. That's where people say, well, I didn't choose that. I mean, I don't want to scare myself. And we agree, we acknowledge you didn't choose to scare yourself. The question is, as soon as you have that experience, you have a choice in how you interpret it now. You didn't choose to startle yourself, but now what are you going to do? And what kind of story will you create if you create a story about that? Are you going to disappoint yourself because, like in my case, my nervous system, I feel, is more reactive than I would like at certain times. So if I have a startle response, I disappoint myself. I disappoint myself in myself. I wish I didn't have that response. Well, I'm not blaming anybody. I'm not victimizing myself. I'm just recognizing that this is something about my nature. It's where I'm at this stage in my life. And I want to take ownership of that. I want to accept that's what I'm doing. And as soon as I do that, there is this opening that occurs. Well, if that's what I'm doing, could I do anything else? Is there another way I could respond? Yeah, actually, I could. I could take this as an opportunity to learn how to comfort myself when that happens, which I think would be much healthier than me criticizing and judging myself. So, regardless of what the emotion is, I am the source of it, whether I chose it or not. And now the question is, how do I make meaning of it? How do I interpret it? What do I do? How do I communicate about that emotion?
I like, well, let's take the startled response. That if it is the startle to lightning right outside and I'm standing outside, am I okay with that response? Yeah, I'm good with it. No problems. It's, as you guys would say, it's constructive. You could say productive. However, if it is, I heard the story from a friend that he was at a social gathering and the consummate balloon popped or a car backfired or something, and some guy hits the deck, struggling with PTSD from the military. I would say, in that sense, if it was me, I would say I'm not okay. That is not a constructive. I don't want to dive under a table every time I hear a pop in my life, thinking that it's a war that I'm no longer in. I didn't choose that in the moment, but I can now go work on that programming. And so, yeah, looking at the meaning we make, the interpretation we make, and then asking that question, is it constructive? Am I okay with it? I really, I really enjoy, I comfort myself with that uh, a lot.
Yeah, and you raised the question of why, and um, I'm careful with the why question because I can take myself back in time and I can create a story that answers the question. But what I want to remember in the SAGE orientation is that even that story, I'm making that up.
And does that story serve me well?
Yeah. So a lot of therapy is people basically creating stories that hopefully they think are more functional and serve them. But there's very little awareness that it is a story and it is made up. And we go from one idea that I go from one thing I'm attached to another thing that I'm attached to another thing that I'm attached to. And this is often reinforced in the world of psychology. One of the distinctions that I make, and Kevin's the one who introduced the idea that this is really both a psychological operating system and a spiritual operating system. And for me, the distinction is that the psychological is where I'm trying to understand and learn to work with myself in constructive ways to build a healthy identity. So I'm creating something and I'm attached to what I'm creating. The spiritual operating system is where I'm releasing my attachment to whatever it is that I'm creating. And so there's this beautiful blend for me within SAGE, which is that I recognize that I'm creating, I recognize I'm building my identity, and I'm attaching to my identity. And then I also recognize I made that up. I want to loosen my grip so that if somebody challenges my identity, I don't overreact. I don't become defensive. So there's this beautiful dance that I experience within SAGE.
Let me ask you though, Jake, on that I made it up. Let's go back to let's say the soldier that's dealing with, PTSD type response from a loud noise. So to go back, because I could hear somebody listening right now and go, well, if the dude was here and there was a grenade that went off and hurt his friend and hurt him, he didn't make that up. But we'd say, right, that's an objective reality. It went off. Now the meaning he made out of it, we're saying he made up, maybe not incorrectly or poorly. I don't know. How do we say that? That was it wasn't a good thing. There was terror. I lost my best friend. Did they reconcile that with, did they make it up in that sense?
Well, to reconcile that is really getting at a challenge that I think many people discomfort themselves with. So one of the big things in the world of psychology today is attachment theory. It's very popular. It's widespread. And this is what a lot of people object to. It's made up. It's made up. That doesn't mean that there's not validity to it. That doesn't mean that you can't find examples where it's true. But there are also many cases where people learn about a theory or a model, whether it's attachment theory or whether it's trauma theory, and they then use that to explain themselves, to justify themselves. And there is this quality of constriction. Like, I know why I behave the way I do because there's a theory in psychology that tells me. Well, what we're asking you to do is even question that, to question these theories. If it serves you, if it's productive, that's what matters. But when I step way back, which is kind of what's happened since we moved to Hawaii, and I've been doing more research and writing, I look at the overall state of our mental health and our emotional well-being, and I think we're not progressing, not really, not in my opinion. And so then I start to really question a lot of the assumptions that are part of psychology. We just take these things without questioning them, in terms of even PTSD, and there's a lot of research around it, but we're encouraging people to loosen up They're explanations for why you are the way you are, and to consider other possibilities. Now, if your explanation for why you are the way you are and why you behave the ways you do, if your explanations work and you're just really satisfied and you have wonderful relationships and you have good mental, emotional, and spiritual health, rock and roll, keep going.
Yeah.
It's working. I just don't meet many people that respond that way and say, yeah, what I'm doing is really working. I'm just so satisfied with my relationships with other people and with myself. So that's what we're trying to crack open and suggest that many of the things that we have attached to may have, there may be a different way to interpret that would be more constructive.
I'm going to use an example you gave to me at some point where you made up a number, but conceptually, you said out of 1,000 patients that you worked with, you really experienced one guy whose, I think you said is whose buttons you couldn't push. I guess we could say who wasn't triggerable to some degree. That's when, because when you just talked about the culture, it doesn't seem like it's working. I experience an increasingly insecure culture, even amongst people who are very competent and confident. I'm interested in that contrast of confidence and security, because I witness a lot of confidence in people, myself included, confident in my ability to do, to my capabilities, my capacity, whatnot. I can be confident and still be insecure. And well, somebody can push my buttons. There's always been someone who can push my buttons. I have given my agency some power over to them. And yeah, I feel like we are an insecure nation. If we can be triggered, if we can be have our buttons pushed, I don't find that constructive. So I want to be the person that doesn't, not that I'm emotionless, and you guys can speak to this, because it's not that. It's not being emotionless. It's not being Captain Stoic. It's not letting anything or saying, nothing bothers me. But it's, well, you go with that. Take it from there. It's not, that's not the point, but it is to not be, in essence, controlled by it. That feels too simplistic.
It's not to be reactive, really.
Reactive.
Right. So what I want to do is have some choice in how I respond. There's that quote, I believe it was Viktor Frankl, who said, or maybe it was Rollo May, there's a space between the stimulus and the response. And in that space lies our power and freedom. So there's a stimulus, then there's a response. And in between those two, we create meaning. There's a stimulus, and I interpret it. And based on how I interpret it, I'm going to respond. And that's that place that we're trying to create more space, which I can't do when I'm running on autopilot and using regular language without really thinking or paying attention. But when I use S.A.G.E language, I slow myself down, and Hannah's a much better example of this than I am. She almost always speaks relatively slowly. That creates time, it creates space to be more thoughtful about how we respond instead of being reactive.
And if I'm coming from a place of knowing that my interpretation is made up, then I can open myself up to a different kind of response rather than being reactive.
There's a humility in it, don't you think?
Right.
Which is, I would describe that as foundational for you, that you bring a certain humility as opposed to certitude. And that creates more flexibility, more opening, more room.
Mm-hmm.
I find myself wanting to talk on certainty, but we may have to come back to that or do it in another show. Even there's the aspect of creating meaning, as you just said, Hannah. That was a key part of this, of me understanding the concept better than the old ways that I had been presented with writing your own story, authoring your own narrative, and XYZ happens. We'll just make a better story about it. And it felt so inauthentic, especially if I had negative emotions. But then when you say, okay, whatever's going on, but you are going to create meaning out of it. That was one of the main things that caught me, that again connected a dot with me, that I'm going to make the meaning. XYZ happens, a car wreck happens and you're injured. Well, nobody's going to look at that and go, oh, it's a great thing necessarily. I mean, we don't know the outcome, but for the most part, we'd say, okay, it's a bad thing. But going forward, what's going to affect us generally more than the incident is the meaning we make
Right.
going forward, which Hannah, you could speak, coming from abuse, the abuse happened. What did it mean about you? Well, not really anything, but generally anyone who has trauma happen, they make meaning out of it about themselves that they're making up. And on that note, Fern in the chat, and again, folks, if you're listening to the podcast later, we're broadcasting this live on YouTube on my channel, Kevin Miller CO. She says, can you touch on using SAGE with a partner having an affair? I think it's similar with the PTSD and the soldier that you're talking about, question mark. You guys want to comment?
Yeah. This is, I interest myself in this one because I've always known that a few things. If Hannah had an affair early on when we were married, it would have been the end of our marriage. We both were remarkably intolerant. And I mean that constructively. We had very tight boundaries, very tight agreements. And we both knew if the other one was unfaithful, we weren't going to go to therapy and work on it. That was a red line. Now, 35 years later, not that I'm encouraging this, but if Hannah were to have an affair, I would really have to stop and listen to what in the world she was doing. How could that possibly occur? What have I been missing?
Right.
What did I not see coming and when? I would look at myself and I would go to an extreme degree to try and understand how this happened. I wouldn't have done that 20 years ago. I had a lot more certainty. I lived in a more black and white world. I wasn't as steeped in this orientation. So things that seem absolute don't generally remain absolute as we adopt this orientation. I'm not saying that we would get through that. I don't know what would happen, but I would respond very differently than I would have years ago. I do have a choice. I definitely have a choice. And I have worked with Vietnam vets, and many of them have suffered post-traumatic stress. And there is evidence that they can learn to rewire their response. But that requires taking a great deal of responsibility. As long as the person remains, as long as they feel like they're a victim, there's far less opportunity to rewire their brain and their perspective on life. So there's nothing I can think of that the SAGE orientation doesn't consider and offer an alternative, a different way of thinking about it.
Again, looking at the meaning to me, what is the meaning I'm attaching? Is it constructive? It's tempting, and it almost came off my tongue right there. Is the interpretation true? I think we would agree that no. We've kind of gotten rid of truth. It's either constructive to us or not, productive to us or not. Which I don't know if you guys saw this in the chat. Attributed to the name of baby, but it says, what if my interpretation is at odds with that of someone else? What if I am not okay with their response? Thank you for that, because that's one I came to Jake and Hannah to grapple with multiple times, because in talking, as I shared Sage with others, multiple times I realized people were offending themselves with it feeling like all the impetus is on me, right? I have personal agency, which I'm saying, yes, I do. And so I'm not going to say that so and so is being a jerk, or that, their interpretation of something that I'm not okay with. I'm not saying that it's okay and, they can do theirs. I can still look at that and go, okay, I hear your interpretation, and I'm not okay. I choose not to be okay with it. I'm not going to. And that's where, really, I mean, the word, or what you guys brought me to with it, is that's what boundaries are about.
Right.
And I will testify to this. I've done, we all know boundaries. Henry Cloud, he's probably, I think he's the one who put that name on the map of boundaries. I did a show on boundaries with Nedra Glover Tawwab, big name again in boundaries. She's a psychologist. I did another one with Terry Cole, the boundary boss. I appreciate Terry real well. I've done a couple shows with both of them, actually. I still did not connect with boundaries well. I knew it intellectually. I did not connect with it until Sage. It's just a true story for me. Until I understood that they're making up meaning, I'm making up meaning, and that I'm allowed to say, I'm not okay with the meaning you're making up, especially if it's somebody's making up meaning about me that I just don't align with, don't agree with. And then being able to say, well, deciding on what your boundary is. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I think one of the differences is that outside of SAGE, when we think about boundaries, we're often talking about controlling other people. And I'm going to give you an ultimatum that you have to behave in a certain way if you want to be in relationship with me. That doesn't generally work very well. Within SAGE, it's very different in that I'm not going to tell you what you have to do. I'm going to tell you what's going on for me. The example that is most vivid in our marriage is that when we got together, I was very flirtatious. And at first, Hannah said, you have to stop doing that. And we just argued because I said, I'm not doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
I'm a very faithful guy, which I was. But she didn't like something about the way I interacted with other women. At the time, I didn't see it. We fought about it until we learned the SAGE orientation. And then Hannah represented it by saying, I'm making myself super anxious when I watch you relating with some other women. And I don't think I can just go through the rest of my life feeling this way. I just am too uncomfortable. That was totally different. All of a sudden, I felt tremendous empathy and love for her and realized and listen to this. I realized what she was doing to herself, how she was using me to hurt herself. So I didn't feel defensive. I didn't feel like I was wrong or a bad person. I just heard somebody I love saying that my behavior, she took that behavior and really upset herself. Last thing in the world I wanted to have happen. And as soon as I got that, the whole dynamic shifted, completely changed.
Well,
But I wasn't being forced or controlled.
Well, and you weren't arguing, doing what I did so much in the past and arguing about right or wrong.
Right.
You're just saying, look, I have this interpretation. I hear yours. You're welcome to it, but I'm not okay continuing with that interpretation. Mary, over here in the chat, back to your story, the made up story about the affair. She said, yeah, Jake, you're not accepting blame for the affair. It's more that you're humble from the SAGE orientation. She said, you just said it. Victim perspectives don't support a constructive outcome. And I also wanted to pull up my brother, Jared. Man, I'm honored. My brother's here. He said it requires a strong foundation of self-love and confidence to approach relationships with curiosity and a commitment, viewing everyone as our mirror. I go ahead.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I want to point out that even if I don't have a lot of self-love or confidence, if I use this SAGE language and this orientation, I can reveal myself, I can share myself in a way that will still support the kind of growth and seeing other people as a mirror. In other words, I can say, I'm feeling really insecure about this. I'm very uncomfortable telling you what I'm about to tell you, but I think it's really important for you to know how I feel, how I make myself feel. I want to be clear, how I'm making myself feel when I see you doing X. And just so you know, in my mind, X equals neglect. May not be the way you think of it. So the reason I bring it up, Jared, is I don't want people to think that we have to get to a certain point in terms of our development because I have enough self-love and I have enough confidence that I can use this. I can use this almost regardless of my level of development if I'm committed to doing so. I'm sure there are counterexamples, but in general, I approach it in that way.
Well, I would say, yeah, to Jared, what you said, man, the knowing, under saging myself and being curious, making the effort to, I continually reveal my insecurities daily, going through difficult circumstances that I find difficult. I reveal my insecurities. And again, it's kind of the force thing. Using Sage, I force myself to see it, and I have to slow down. My responses are, I give them time. I give them time. Sometimes I don't even know how to be Sage in the moment. I just know that my reaction is not going to be. So I'm going to wait.
You also have said, Kevin, and this has been true for us, that you use far fewer words. You've shared with us stories where you get a text that might historically have led to another long response, and now you tend to use fewer words and at times choose not even to respond.
Again, I reveal myself to myself continually. Being in a social group, it's not that I'm often hearing something that I'm threatened with, but yeah, being conscious of my language and what I'm about to say and questioning what the motive is behind it. You guys know that. That's why I got so enamored myself with identity and realizing, oh my gosh, the amount of words that I speak, of communication that I offer, that is either to protect my identity
Right.
or just to kind of give it a little nudge up. And now I realize, yeah, so often anything I was going to say, it's not really, it doesn't really add anything to the conversation. And I speak less, or back to what Jared said, or I'm just curious. I ask questions, which of course that's no way to have people think you're amazing more than asking them questions instead of talking. And we tell. Isn't that what you
Right.
say? We tell. We're
Right.
a nation, a culture of tellers,
Yeah.
not of asking questions. I think I've benefited from having a show where that's my job, is to ask questions.
Yeah.
It's a great way to have people really think you're great.
Well, it's also a great way to connect for us. I mean, when you came out and spent time with us, Hannah and I both had the same reaction. We'd never been with anyone who was as curious.
Yeah.
And it just created a foundation for connection that was memorable for us. Yeah.
Well, and obviously the topic was just of utmost. I couldn't have been more interested in it, and how I experienced you guys was just couldn't have been more attractive, more resonant, more enjoyable. And I could just keep adding adjectives that I felt. I felt peace, and I still do today. And I experience you guys as at a level of inner security and peace that I have not found in most people. Again, even those not to pick on any, but a lot of them that are on my show, and they've got, I think, messages and insight that is tremendous to me and worth sharing, which I do. And yet I get to see them in their lives, and I'm not always seeing secure people.
Yeah.
I've had a lifetime of that, being with influential people that I didn't find as very secure. I think I've always, been a grappling point for me, but I just didn't understand it because I didn't understand it in myself. So as I reveal more of myself to myself through Sage, man, my ability to connect with people just increases. Literally, the podcast, I've never gotten more positive feedback from my guests than I do today, because I think my curiosity has ratcheted up and it's just more authentic. It's just more authentic. I don't know how to, it seems more authentic. It seems to come off more authentic, and I can't tell you why. Maybe you can tell me why.
Well, I'm looking at Jared's comment that relates to what you're saying. He said,
Yeah.
yes, the SAGE process can help build someone's self-love and confidence. And I think this gets at the difference between telling and what we call revealing. That when we tell people about them or the world, or tell them about ourselves, the likelihood of having that kind of authentic connection is much smaller than when I reveal how I'm doing myself, how I'm constructing meaning. And my experience is when I reveal in that way, people come toward me. And when I tell, it's not that they back away, but there's some barrier. Unless they agree with absolutely everything that I've said, and that's fairly rare. The way that happens often, and this is the opposite of SAGE, is when we commiserate with people, we complain about things, and that's another way that people bond, but I don't consider that to be a constructive way of connecting or bonding. And it's a whole other topic that we'll get into about commiserating, or what's often referred to as validating, and where's the line between validating and commiserating. I think that's probably for another show, but very, very important distinction in me.
That aspect of when you are telling me your interpretation of something, that you're not telling me, I don't know, maybe it's a level. I mean, to some degree, could you be describing it, an event, an incident, an object, and telling me about it to some degree, but then to another degree, and I don't know how you quantify it, you're telling me about yourself. We've used that analogy of a bear. So if a bear comes out of the woods, the bear and the mama cubs, like has happened so many times this season, and one person in the house terrifies themselves and said, "Oh my gosh, this menacing bear came up to the house," and they tell you the story. They're telling you about themselves, just like if you were talking to me. I'm going, "Oh, it's the coolest thing ever. Most exciting thing happened in this bear." Well, the bear's a bear. We're both telling you about ourselves. That right there. Talk about curious. My curiosity to sit back and listen to people, especially if they're talking amongst themselves, and I'm just voyeuristically listening, and to listen to them telling about themselves, but we tell it as what is reality. And I don't know that I'll ever not feel amazement at that, because back to like what you said, we're still correcting our own language now. You guys have been doing this forever. I've been doing it, but I spoke and thought this way for 50 plus years. And now, as much as I'm a part of this, man, I challenge myself to speak differently and then think differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I see that Fern said, I thought connection comes from validation. And I just want to be clear that a certain kind of connection comes from validation, but it's not necessarily the healthiest form of connection. So if you're complaining and I validate your complaint, if you're saying my life is difficult and people are doing bad things to me and no wonder I'm having a hard time, and I validate you, I just reinforce what I would consider to be a victim story. We are connecting. You're going to probably feel pretty good temporarily, like, oh boy, Jake understands me. But I don't feel good about reinforcing that story. I don't want to see you or hold you in my mind in that way. So that's part of why we don't validate people, which doesn't mean that we don't listen. And we use the term witness, that we witness people, but we're not saying yes to the story when the story is not constructive. Sometimes, even if the story is constructive, we're not saying yes. We're simply witnessing the person.
Well, as you guys know, I'm actually recording a show tomorrow on validation. And I told the psychiatrist, I said, I've got issues. So if she's willing to talk, we will. And she said, yeah. But in her book, right at the beginning, she talks about the acceptance. Acceptance means acknowledging the reality of a situation without judging or trying to change it, as an aspect of validation. It sounds good, but right there, acknowledging the reality of a situation.
Yeah. As if there is one reality, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be curious to hear that podcast.
I will be too. I will be too. Well, hey, we're about at the top of the hour here, and really appreciate. I saw a lot of the comments, and Mary, I saw a lot from you. I wasn't able to keep up with all of them, but we'll retain those. But thanks for being here. This is what we wanted to do, is have this discussion and be able to also have the energy of the comments with you guys. But also, yeah, this is what I experienced Sage as. I mean, here's the content. You saw the blueprint. It's very succinct in regards to your normal book and message. And the talking about it, the discussion, the conversation, I like the term grappling with it, is how I continue to sage myself best. So thanks for being a part, Jake and Hannah.
Yeah, I just want to say that we're touching on a lot of different aspects, and which is fun and interesting. You may disorient yourself with some of the things we're saying. That's pretty normal. What I would encourage people to do, if you interest yourself in this, is to go through the blueprint and really just start with the agreements. If you can fully accept and embrace the first agreement, which is kind of the main theme today about interpretation and how we make meaning, that's a great foundation. Then move on to the second agreement. And each week we'll take time to talk about the agreements. And if you're having a hard time with one and you bring it to the conversation, we'll dig in with you. We'll explore it.
Yeah. Which is what I had the gift of doing with you guys, is coming back and going, okay, this makes sense to me. I don't know how to refute it, but I'm not sure how to employ it, to engage with it in this circumstance. Help me out. So that's what I hope we're able to do with a lot of people here. Yeah. Okay.
Hey, just love being here and enjoying the share.
Yeah. Thank you all.
All right. Thanks, everybody. Hope to see you next week. Yeah. All right.